isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell, and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
The judge saying, my concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors. Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges. But prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urged the judge to remand him.
What happens is, if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95, that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense, because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
Mr. Combs feels, A, he's innocent. I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
correct.
criminal,
I know that.
In the criminal case,
right.
no.
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Elaborate, sometimes days-long parties by coercing victims through drugs, threats, and manipulation. They claim to have video evidence, and some of the accusations echo details from over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Combs over the last 30 years.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So,
You say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
Y'all know what this is about. Put your hands up.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that, because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way. The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
She did, and when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
Federal trafficking, racketeering, and charges beginning Monday morning.
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts. When he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks?
For sure, weeks.
What if a line of code could glimpse the future of a music mogul? ChatGPT just ran the numbers on Sean Diddy Combs, and the outlook is anything but shiny. From platinum records to a possible life sentence, here's why the next few weeks may redefine hip-hop history. Let me spill all the details on what folks are whispering behind closed doors, because oh my gosh, it sounds wild. Alright, so let's dive into Diddy's come-up, because rumor is that everything started way back in the hustle-bustle vibe of Harlem. A ton of old interviews and behind-the-scenes chatter say that even in his earliest days, he was so extra about chasing success. Allegedly, he was making small waves by showing up in studios, offering to do whatever it took just to rub shoulders with local talent, producers, and movers in the music world. This was like the late 80s and early 90s, and hip-hop was this exploding galaxy of creative energy. Some say Diddy was right there at ground zero, soaking up every beat he could, learning from up-and-coming legends, stepping in like a kid in a candy store who wanted every flavor. Back when your average person was talking about a future in a regular 9-to-5 job, rumor is that Diddy was basically living in recording studios, sleeping on couches, just waiting on that golden moment that would catapult him from intern to industry big shot. People mention how he got noticed by some executives because he had this over-the-top personality that would light up every hallway he stepped into. He was the type to talk a mile a minute, telling everyone who would listen that he was going to change the face of music. Allegedly, he was shining shoes, picking up coffee, sweeping floors, just anything to get a seat at the table. It is said that by the time he got some real responsibilities in the business, he'd already memorized how record deals are negotiated, how songs are mixed, and how stars are built from scratch. When Harrell's Uptown Records took him under its wing for a bit, rumor is that Diddy soaked up the whole glamorous and gritty vibe of the era. He seemed to learn how to bring that rawness of the streets and polish it into something mainstream audiences would buy into big time. By the early 90s, the name Puff Daddy was swirling around certain music circles, a reference that always came with a little star power. Then came Bad Boy Records. If you listen to folks who were there from day one, they say the energy in those early Bad Boy offices was just bananas. Everyone was scrambling to sign talented acts, produce the hottest tracks, and hustle the local scene. By 1993, Biggie Smalls, aka the Notorious B.I.G., emerged as one of the biggest draws. Some say Diddy had that unstoppable hustle, promoting Biggie's music everywhere. He was apparently slipping cassette tapes to DJs, orchestrating press drop-bys, and calling every radio station that would pick up the phone. Insiders believe that combination of Biggie's raw talent and Diddy's marketing wizardry turned Bad Boy Records from a startup label into a music juggernaut. AP News once highlighted how quickly the label expanded, going from a tiny office space to multiple floors filled with staff. Everyone was wearing those famously flashy 90s outfits, rocking shades, throwing the wildest dance parties, and talking about living the dream. Over time, Diddy's brand extended far beyond rap. He hopped into R&B, philanthropic events, brand endorsement deals, and eventually put his name on parties that celebrities from coast to coast desperately wanted to attend. People said he could turn any place into a scene that felt oh so exclusive, dripping with high-end beverages, custom lighting, and that hype energy that makes everyone want to show up in their best attire. Even folks who weren't massive fans of rap wanted to party with him. That's one of the reasons he soared into mainstream consciousness without skipping a beat. As years rolled on, he started collecting trophies and accolades, Grammys, MTV Awards, you name it. Some folks whispered that everything was happening so fast, it was like living in a real-life movie. He had these million-dollar mansions, fancy cars, and red carpet appearances that left everyone starstruck. Still, not all was perfect. Rumor is that behind the velvet rope, Diddy had a fiery temper. Stories have popped up in tabloids about nightclub incidents, with alleged run-ins involving other artists and even random club goers. There was talk about scuffles in VIP sections, bottles thrown, backstage brawls that never made mainstream news but definitely fueled the rumor mill. Some of these whispers go back to the late 90s and early 2000s, which suggests that for all the polish and brightness of the brand he presented to the world, there might have been cracks in the crown. Some longtime fans still debate the truth, saying those stories got inflated for publicity or that these rumors were started by folks who wanted to hop on the Diddy drama train. But as we move along, we can see how these small bits of gossip and these random allegations started stacking up. By the time the mid-2000s rolled around, some in the paparazzi scene claimed that Diddy's security teams were next level, allegedly warding off not just fans and paparazzi, but also potential scene disruptors, who might threaten his carefully curated public image. The entire persona of the carefree party king didn't always jive with the hush-hush stories of payoffs and hush money. Whispers grew louder that behind the scenes, Diddy's empire was a carefully regulated fortress, and if you tried to slip through the cracks, you might face consequences. At the same time, the empire itself was still blossoming. He had Ciroc vodka deals that soared in sales. Forbes even crowned him as a near-billionaire thanks to that deal and others like Sean John clothing. Folks still talk about that iconic white party. The brand synergy was insane. He would blast marketing for the clothing line, the vodka brand, and the label all at once, making sure if you saw Diddy somewhere, you saw his brand, you heard the music, and you wanted a piece of that glamorous lifestyle. Meanwhile, the pressure was mounting. Some old enemies were still around, some old grievances never got resolved, or so the rumor goes. Talk of disillusioned ex-employees, producers who felt used, or in-house drama all lingered. But it never seemed enough to bring down the empire. Eventually, over the years, we heard about everything from fists thrown behind those velvet ropes to short-lived romantic flings that ended in hush-hush settlements. Observers speculated that Diddy survived those storms because his brand was unstoppable. He had a golden touch in business that made him too big to fail. Folks inside the music industry describe him as unstoppable, allegedly always finding a new revenue stream or a fresh face to push on social media. And it seemed that whenever controversies cropped up, he was at the top of the game with a new big concert, a new TV show, or some event that had everyone buzzing. But now we're seeing more than just cracks in the crown. It's like a full-on thunderstorm, with lawsuits piling up and rumor after rumor about some pretty ominous stuff. The statements from certain alleged victims paint a stark picture, a controlling and intimidating figure. Yes, it's all alleged, but the sheer amount of hearsay coming forward has people's heads spinning. Everyone in the music scene is anxiously waiting. They're saying, is the golden era over, or is Diddy going to bounce back with a slick move that leaves everyone stunned once again? With the upcoming courtroom battles and revelations, the once shining crown is definitely under stress. Some watchers suspect that these cracks we once heard about in hush whispers are unfolding for all to see. There's a tense vibe out there, like the final season of a hit show where everything is about to be revealed. Diddy's legacy, which soared into heights of unimaginable success, is about to be tested in ways nobody predicted. Best believe the entire hip-hop world is on standby. AP News once profiled Diddy's unstoppable climb, highlighting the exact moment his brand transitioned from mere music to an all-encompassing lifestyle empire. But the same article hinted at behind-the-scenes drama that might someday surface. Here we are. This is that time. Tales of disclaimers, payoffs, hush money, and NDAs might be the final piece that breaks the crown, or the empire might adapt. Because if we've learned anything from Diddy's track record, it's that he is always ready to pivot, making miracles happen when nobody expects it. For now, we watch like hawks because the next chapter could rewrite everything. Now let's talk about this absolute tsunami of lawsuits that started flooding in, especially around November 2023. Allegedly, it was like the floodgates opened after singer Cassie Ventura decided she had enough and filed a massive lawsuit, detailing claims of coercion, abuse, and a dynamic that was beyond toxic. Some fans were stunned, but others whispered that they saw it coming. The two had a public relationship that some described as all sunshine and roses, while privately rumor is that Cassie was living in fear. She claimed in that lawsuit that Diddy controlled every move she made, even deciding what she wore and who she talked to. The legal files, according to the Washington Post, painted a scenario that was deeper and darker than a typical celebrity breakup. The real stunner was how quickly they settled. Like we're talking within a day or so, the rumor mill practically exploded with speculation about how big that settlement check might have been. Some guessed 7 figures, others said it might have been even bigger. The attorneys rushed to keep details confidential. Fans online debated whether Cassie's quick settlement meant she got her rightful dues, or if it was just hush money offered before too many media outlets started poking around. But either way, that single lawsuit seemed to spark something. Like as soon as Cassie broke the ice, a slew of new cases popped up. Some counted more than 70 civil suits after that November bombshell. It was like a wave that kept growing. Yes, some of these allegations sounded flimsy, but a big chunk of them sounded steel strong, especially the ones that mentioned repeated patterns of intimidation from Diddy's camp. People started noticing the overlap in stories. Similar details emerged, with claims of fear, hush money, or direct threats that kept people silent for years. The Washington Post reported on how attorneys for Diddy tried to paint these plaintiffs as opportunists who just wanted a piece of the pie. They apparently said that if you dangle money in front of people, you'll see them come out of the woodwork. But at the same time, you had alleged victims stepping forward, saying they just wanted justice and closure, that the star power once overshadowed their voices. In some of these lawsuits, we saw references to late-night parties, alleged forced drug use, and manipulative tactics that left individuals feeling isolated. It's a lot heavier than just rock star partying. Some claims mention rough confrontations that left bruises and bigger emotional scars. About 4 of these suits fizzled out or were dismissed, according to sources close to the situation. People online said maybe that was proof not all allegations held weight. But the internet quickly fired back with the idea that even if a handful seemed weak, there were still dozens more that carried serious claims. The conversation on social media was heated. You had the die-hard Diddy fans defending him, saying these stories were orchestrated. Then you had the folks who believed every bit of it, stating that powerful men often hide behind their cash. It felt almost like a war of words between 2 camps who each felt their narrative was the correct one. Some longtime watchers recall previous murmurs about legal hush settlements connected to Diddy. They talked about NDAs that apparently had people tied up for years, feeling they didn't have the freedom to speak publicly. Those NDAs might be one reason that it took so long for a wave of lawsuits to appear. People were stuck in fear or in legal handcuffs, lacking the resources to fight a star as big as Diddy. But Cassie's brave step changed the game. The moment her filing went public, it seemed to encourage others. Some speculate that attorneys were contacting each other behind the scenes, gathering evidence pointing to patterns. That's how you jump from one public lawsuit to a wave of more than 70. It was like a domino effect. Now, inside the courts, the stack of civil suits turned into a complicated web of claims. Some attorneys filed in different jurisdictions, from New York to California, trying to find the best angle. Others tried to consolidate their cases to present a united front. This is all according to the Washington Post, which noted the complexity of having so many overlapping stories. Some suits alleged emotional torment, others were way heavier, pointing to repeated assaults or forced interactions. The mountain of paperwork grew with each passing day, and tabloids were frothing at the mouth to get more details. Behind the scenes, rumor is that Diddy's legal team is made up of some of the biggest power attorneys in the business. They apparently had teams of investigators going through each claim, looking for inconsistencies or anything that could discredit the plaintiffs. Meanwhile, the plaintiffs' lawyers were said to be sifting through old texts, emails, and photos, hoping to find something that would truly nail down their points. This tug-of-war took place quietly for a while, but word on the street is that a few big revelations are slated to come out in open court, which obviously has everyone on edge. The timeline is hectic, with new allegations swirling around as soon as we think we've heard it all. By early 2024, it was like every entertainment blog was running a piece on this saga. People who'd worked at Bad Boy Records in the 90s were giving cryptic interviews, implying they saw shady stuff but never felt safe speaking up. Others said it was all overblown, that the real story is about some ex-associates who feel resentful and want a payout. And then came the folks in the middle, who said it might be a bit of both. They believed Diddy definitely had some skeletons in his closet, but also believed certain opportunists might be piggybacking on the moment. Regardless, the lawsuit avalanche changed his reputation. A star once known for making shiny dance tracks and hosting epic parties was starting to look like the center of a swirling storm of legal drama. Corporate sponsors don't typically love that kind of press, so people wondered if brand deals were on the line. The Washington Post noted that while Diddy was always good at controlling his narrative through big marketing pushes, these lawsuits weren't going away easily, especially since more alleged victims seemed prepared to lose everything just to speak their truth. It's also important to note that while some claims were quickly settled, others have not been resolved. People in the legal world say that might lead to extended depositions and maybe even more shocking admissions. Everyone hopes the truth gets sorted out in court, but for now, it's a mix of new lawsuits, old hush stories, and fans grappling with how to feel about an idol they once admired. The crowd that's been in his corner for decades is having trouble reconciling the entrepreneur and party guy with these darker allegations. Still, the avalanche of lawsuits keeps growing, and the narrative feels unstoppable. This is the biggest threat to Diddy's empire that we've seen in decades. The vibe now is that no matter how many checks he writes, these stories have grown bigger than the hush money can manage. The narrative means more to the public than just a celebrity scandal. It's about how powerful figures may or may not be able to bully their way past alleged victims. As we move forward, it all circles back to that fateful November 2023 lawsuit filed by Cassie. Thousands of people will remember that moment when the glossy facade of a major hip-hop mogul seemed to crack in real time. Even though they settled quickly, the aftereffects are still being felt. Media outlets continue to analyze every motion, every press statement, every little rumor that surfaces. The real question for many is whether this wave of legal hassle will be the downfall of Diddy's empire or just a bump in the road. Allegedly, some say it's too big a storm to weather, while others believe the man has survived so much that he might come out swinging once again. The only thing we know for sure is that the lawsuits keep coming, and the next episodes of this drama look like they'll be even more explosive. The Washington Post coverage has proven that this avalanche of lawsuits is not just celebrities being dramatic or tabloids chasing clicks. It appears to be a genuine reckoning, where folks who felt scared or voiceless for so long are stepping into the light. Whether or not a court eventually sides with them, the fact they're stepping forward in these numbers is a sign that Diddy's aura of invincibility is being put to the ultimate test. Now we're at the turning point where everything got even more intense. Imagine the scene. March 2024, early morning raids on not one but two of Diddy's mansions. We're talking top-of-the-line estates, the kind you might see in a glossy magazine spread. Federal agents in dark jackets, brandishing search warrants, hustling past gates, rummaging around for evidence. According to ABC, they were looking for something big: servers, hard drives, any data that might link Diddy to more serious offenses than those covered by the civil suits. The rumor is that they found items described as blackmail tapes, containing footage that is extremely graphic. Allegedly, these tapes show forced encounters, intimidation tactics, and all sorts of questionable behavior that might go beyond just personal conflicts. Some legal experts are saying if that footage is authentic, it could be the nail in the coffin. Apparently, authorities believe these recordings were used to control or silence folks who had stories to tell. The big question, though we're not using question marks, so let's rephrase, people wonder if these tapes were made for personal gratification or for leverage. They might show confrontations, arguments that escalated, or explicit scenarios that do not paint Diddy in a flattering light. The FBI got hold of everything and took it to a forensic lab, the kind with high-tech specialists that can recover deleted files. It's wild to think that in today's digital age, even if you try to wipe a server, experts can often piece the puzzle back together. The reason federal heat is so serious is because this is no longer just about civil suits or hush money. Now you've got the music mogul facing potential federal charges if the evidence supports the claims. ABC reported that the search warrants were authorized because investigators had credible leads pointing to repeated exploitation, possibly crossing state lines. That would open the door for some heavy federal allegations. If those blackmail tapes exist and show what some sources claim, you could have a scenario of forced exploitation combined with crossing state lines, which is a federal offense. Also, if weapons were used in these tapes as intimidation props, that could amplify charges even more. The big shocker is that these early morning raids took place simultaneously. Word got out that the feds didn't want to give Diddy's team even a second to hide or destroy evidence. They swooped in, apparently with backup plans. Neighbors described a scene like something out of a movie, with multiple vehicles, guys with headsets, and the whole block taped off. People on social media were freaking out, filming from their windows. The speculation machine started whirling. Was Diddy himself there during the raid? Did they take him in for questioning? Did they find mountains of suspicious data? Nobody had full answers, but rumors flew everywhere. Inside the mansions, the feds allegedly found entire data storage rooms, climate-controlled setups for servers, and piles of old tapes that might date back years. Some say these tapes had labels referencing parties, travel, and personal moments that might overlap with certain allegations from the civil suits. This is all speculation, of course, but multiple sources told ABC that the content was disturbing. People rumored to have connections inside the investigation said some footage is so intense, it could pivot public perception in a heartbeat if it's ever played in a courtroom. Prosecutors are calling this a major break in the case against Diddy, especially if they can prove that these tapes were used to manipulate or force compliance. That would up the ante, turning a messy civil scandal into a criminal operation. According to ABC, these tapes are now locked away in an evidence locker under top security because if they leaked, it would spark a media firestorm. The government likely wants to keep the content sealed until they can properly present it to a grand jury or in open court. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team tried to spin the narrative that the feds overreached, claiming any footage was private property and that the public is misunderstanding the context. They said that having security cameras and personal videos in one's home is not automatically illegal. But investigators, who are obviously not dropping every detail, seem confident they've stumbled onto something big, especially when it comes to the alleged blackmail angle. What's crazy is how the public reacted. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok practically blew up with speculation about what these tapes might contain. Influencers started saying they heard from inside sources that the footage includes non-consensual encounters. Others said it was mostly Diddy's typical raucous parties with him filming edgy stuff. Nobody truly knows, but that's the kind of hype swirling around. The bigger point is that federal authorities don't just do coordinated raids because of hearsay. Typically, they gather enough intel to get a judge to sign off on a warrant, which means there's probable cause to believe these items contain evidence of a crime. That's not a small deal. This entire pivot from lawsuits to potential criminal charges has turned the spotlight up to maximum intensity. Diddy went from someone battling civil suits to possibly facing federal prosecution. If proven, that's a total game changer. Fans and critics alike are bracing for a possible legal meltdown because federal convictions carry serious time. Even if you beat some charges, you might get pinned on others. Once the feds lock in, it's not easy to slip away unscathed. No matter how you slice it, the fact that these blackmail tapes allegedly exist is the biggest bombshell so far. ABC says the existence of forced content, if validated, could lay the groundwork for crimes like interstate sex trafficking, coercion, or conspiracy. The idea is that if multiple people were involved in filming or distributing these tapes with the intent to control or threaten others, you're talking about a ring or enterprise that might break multiple statutes. That's where things get next-level scary. Even some who doubted the original civil claims are taking note of the federal interest. It's one thing for tabloids to run a headline, but once Uncle Sam is at your doorstep, that's a different type of scrutiny. Witnesses are apparently being interviewed. Some are possibly flipping on their old boss or colleague to avoid trouble themselves. This phase often leads to deals, like if you provide enough information, you might get immunity. So the rumor is that some ex-security staff or ex-associates might be telling the feds everything they know. The big question: is Diddy the main target, or are there more people in his inner circle? Could more celebrities be implicated in this saga? It's a big mystery. But the talk is that multiple top-tier names might get pulled in if they appear in those tapes. Even though we're skipping question marks, it's definitely a swirl of speculation that's fueling countless social media threads. In the midst of all this, Diddy remains mostly quiet in public about the raids. A few cryptic social media posts here and there, but nothing direct. Some see that as a sign of a meltdown, others see it as a savvy legal move. Typically, when you're under federal scrutiny, your lawyers tell you to zip it. That's why we're left with the swirling rumors, the hush-hush insiders, and the cryptic media quotes. The entire vibe is that something huge is simmering behind closed doors. Some watchers say it's only a matter of time before the next wave of shocking details hits the headlines. This federal heat could mark the point of no return for Diddy. If the tapes are as incriminating as they're rumored to be, and if they indeed show forced encounters or violent intimidation, public sympathy might disappear fast. There's a fine line between being a flashy, somewhat edgy celebrity and being an alleged perpetrator of serious crimes. The latter isn't something the public or brands can easily ignore. The FBI's involvement signals that we've escalated well beyond standard showbiz drama. From here on out, it's a high-stakes game that might lead to indictments and lengthy trials. Not only is the music industry watching, but so are fans, sponsors, and other major artists who have collaborated with Diddy. The entire entertainment world is on standby, waiting to see how big this explosion might be. Everybody's curious about whether a star of Diddy's caliber can survive a federal criminal inquiry with serious charges looming. For now, we know the feds have a trove of digital content they believe is key evidence. The question, rephrased as a statement, is that many are speculating everything will come down to what's on those drives. Next up, we have the grand jury dropping a bombshell. According to People.com, a lineup of grand jurors reviewed all the evidence. Testimonies, witness statements, digital backups, you name it, and they slapped Diddy with a list of charges that could change his life forever. These charges allegedly include sex trafficking, kidnapping, firearms violations, and most terrifying for Diddy's team, racketeering. If you're not familiar, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, commonly known as RICO, is a beast. It's the same tool law enforcement has used against mob bosses for years. Rumor is that prosecutors are calling Diddy's alleged network an enterprise that knowingly exploited power, cash, and celebrity status to keep victims trapped. That's a massive claim. Racketeering alone can send someone away for life, especially if the crimes involve repeated acts of violence, exploitation, or trafficking. The prosecutors apparently argued that over the years, this organization spanned multiple states, relied on intimidation tactics, and used hush money to keep everybody in line. Under RICO, they don't just try a single act. They look at the entire pattern of wrongdoing. If even a few major points line up, Diddy could be in real trouble. People.com's coverage indicated that the grand jury was presented with digital evidence, possibly clips or screenshots from those alleged blackmail tapes. This is the moment everything turned from speculation into a formal indictment. Inside the courtroom, sources say the mood was tense. Diddy came in flanked by a high-end legal team, some of whom have repped other big names in the entertainment world. But you can't buy your way out of a RICO charge if the evidence is strong enough. Or so rumor has it. Prosecutors hammered home the idea that Diddy was the puppet master. They pointed to alleged directives that staffers carried out to keep people quiet, things like paying off witnesses, sending threatening messages, or even forcibly moving people from one city to another. That's where kidnapping charges might come into play. A few people from inside the music industry apparently testified, offering more details. It's said that the grand jury deliberated for hours, going over the volume of evidence, which includes statements and forensic data from electronic devices taken during those raids. When the indictment was handed down, it signaled a turning point. People realize now that this is not just some tabloid drama, it is a serious criminal matter. The media is calling it a once-in-a-generation case, a kind of perfect storm where a massive celebrity is up against the might of the federal court system. The reaction was split, as usual. Some folks took to social media to defend Diddy, saying he's being targeted because he's a successful black businessman and that the system always tries to tear down those at the top. Others saw it as justice long overdue, claiming Diddy was no saint and that the stories have circulated for years. In the weeks following the indictment, the rumor mill says Diddy's team tried to negotiate some sort of agreement to reduce the charges, but the prosecutors seemed confident. They apparently have strong evidence, enough to wave away settlement deals. People.com said a few confidential informants might be cooperating. These could be folks from Diddy's inner circle, the ones who allegedly helped him coordinate certain events or hush money deals. If that's true, the prosecution might have insider details that are extremely damaging. Meanwhile, the firearms charge stems from the claim that guns were used to coerce or intimidate certain individuals. If you're carrying weapons, or if your associates are, and you're using that to further illegal acts, that's another checkmark under the RICO umbrella. It might not sound as heavy as the sex trafficking or kidnapping charges, but it all adds up. If the court sees a pattern of repeated behavior, like transporting someone across state lines for forced acts, all while armed, that can lead to a big chunk of prison time. People.com also noted that there might be separate state charges depending on where these alleged crimes occurred. If something happened in California and something else in New York, local authorities might jump in. That's when a big celebrity can find themselves entangled in multiple trials or forced to attend hearing after hearing. Some say Diddy is about to face the biggest test of his entire career, bigger than any rap battle, any business deal, or record label dispute. This is about personal freedom. Fans who followed Diddy from the beginning can hardly believe it. The man who founded Bad Boy Records launched the careers of huge artists, and through iconic parties is now fighting for his future in a way that no one saw coming. Many recall that other artists have faced legal troubles, but not on this scale. The racketeering angle especially is a major curveball. That's typically reserved for real organized crime, but the word in the legal community is that a group of employees, enforcers, and watchers who carry out the star's orders can meet the definition of an enterprise under RICO. In the midst of this chaos, Diddy's official social channels were eerily quiet in terms of responses. His team posted some promotional content for business ventures, but they carefully avoided any mention of the indictment. Critics said it was a sign of denial, while supporters believed he was maintaining a brave face. But behind the scenes, rumor is that crisis PR teams and lawyers were working nonstop to salvage his image and keep brand partnerships from evaporating. Some sponsors might have a morality clause that allows them to walk away if a star is charged with major felonies. That alone could cost millions, if not more. Another factor is the relationship with other artists. Some in the industry might be distancing themselves, worried about guilt by association. People typically don't want to be in the spotlight with someone indicted on extremely serious federal charges. The tension is thick. Observers say that if the case moves quickly to trial, we might see major figures testifying, possibly even more shocking revelations. If the prosecution can show a pattern of threats, finances used to cover up crimes, and connections to show a criminal enterprise, Diddy might be in deep. This could be the moment when the entire empire truly is tested. People.com summarized it best. A grand jury looking at sex trafficking, kidnapping, firearms, and racketeering does not happen every day for a superstar. This might be the biggest show in town for a long time, overshadowing whatever else is happening in entertainment news. Some folks are calling it the trial of the decade. As of now, it seems unstoppable. Diddy's legal dream team is gearing up for a battle royale, but so is the federal government. Everyone is warming up for a high-stakes showdown. The outcome could shape not only Diddy's personal fate, but also influence how the music industry polices itself in the future. Like, could we see more accountability for big stars who might have skeletons in their closet? For now, the official indictment stands as proof that the authorities believe they have enough to pursue criminal charges, which is a big leap from just swirling rumors. The real question is how the evidence holds up in court. If the blackmail tapes are as solid as some claim, and if multiple victims come forward with consistent stories, It might be a long, painful process. Or maybe Diddy's lawyers will find a way to poke holes in the government's case. Either way, the stage is set in a major way. Now let's move to the bombshell that everyone's talking about, the 2016 hotel video. According to WAPT, it was admitted as evidence in this swirling legal drama, and it is rumored to be extremely powerful. It allegedly shows Diddy striking Cassie in a hallway, then dragging her toward their suite. The clip supposedly doesn't last very long, but the rumor is that every frame is damning. Those who have seen it or who claim to have insider knowledge say it is pure visual proof that words can't spin. We all know how images or videos can grab the emotional centers of people's minds more than any speech or statement. It's intense. Picture this, a hotel corridor possibly in the early hours. Cassie is shown leaving or trying to get away, then Diddy appears and the scuffle ensues. WAPT notes that jurors are set to view it frame by frame in slow motion if necessary. The prosecution's plan, rumor says, is to show how physically overbearing the situation was. That's the type of evidence that can bypass any attempt to say it's all made up or blown out of proportion. They can show it, pause it, ask witnesses to describe it, and draw parallels to other alleged incidents. Legal experts say that in a court case, a single piece of video evidence can shift the entire narrative. Juries love tangible proof. Defense teams usually dread visuals because you cannot spin away from them as easily as you can from eyewitness accounts. The image or clip is right there. If the defense tries to say it was a consensual moment taken out of context, the prosecution can still paint a vivid story about how terrified Cassie might have been, how aggressively Diddy might have behaved, and how it all ties into broader patterns of alleged abuse. In the court of public opinion, once that clip leaks, or if it does, it might cause a strong reaction. Some fans might be shocked to see their icon in such a brutal scenario, while others might say it confirms long-held suspicions. WAPT's coverage hints that this single video could earn the label of smoking gun, a term used when evidence is so strong that it alone can seal the deal. However, let's keep in mind disclaimers. We haven't personally seen the clip. We're going off of rumors, hush-hush statements, and leaked tidbits. Allegedly, the footage was recorded by a hotel camera, not by a friend or staffer. That means it's not being labeled as staged. If the date and timestamp are verified, and if the clip is genuine, it's huge. One attorney quoted by WAPT said it might be the biggest piece of evidence in the entire case against Diddy, overshadowing even the blackmail tapes, because it's more straightforward and direct. There's a possibility that the defense will argue it is inconclusive or that you can't see every detail. Maybe they'll say Cassie was intoxicated and tripped, or that the video doesn't show what happened before or after, leaving context out. But many watchers think that if it's as clear as rumored, showing a sustained assault, those defenses might not hold much sway. The public tends to react emotionally to images, and a jury is still comprised of everyday people who watch the same news stories. This video might also open the door to Cassie retelling her story in open court, explaining what led up to that confrontation and how it escalated. If her account lines up perfectly with the footage, that's a 1-2 punch for the prosecution. Any attempt to discredit her might backfire if the video is consistent with her version of events. This is what we call a big moment in the trial. People paying attention to the case are waiting to see how the defense handles this. If they stumble, it could be game over. WAPT also speculated that this could influence other cases. If the footage is that strong, it gives credibility to other accusers who might not have video but have similar allegations. Even if their own allegations are from different times and places, prosecutors can argue that this is a pattern, an established method of control and violence that Diddy might have used. The defense will try to keep each incident separate, but prosecutors often work to show a repeated pattern. In the broader cultural arena, the existence of a smoking gun video is massive. It might prompt heated discussions about domestic violence, power dynamics in the music industry, and how high-profile celebrities are held accountable. People might look back at bits of tension they spotted in old interviews or red carpet appearances. Suddenly, certain looks or body language might get new interpretations, like, was Cassie always on edge? Did fans miss the signs? People love reevaluating the past once they see physical evidence of trouble. At the same time, there's a sense of tragedy surrounding this video. It's an intimate moment of violence, something that shouldn't have happened in the first place, but now it's going to be watched by a room full of lawyers, a judge, and possibly a jury. It's also a reminder that behind the glitz and glam, couples that looked fine on the surface might have been dealing with deep conflicts. Insiders say Cassie had tried to maintain a sense of normalcy but must have felt isolated, especially if the man she was with was one of the most powerful figures in hip-hop. Regarding the timeline, the 2016 date places it in a period when Diddy and Cassie were rumored to be on and off. They'd appear on Instagram looking cozy, then vanish from public sight. The rumor mill churned about breakups and reconciliations. If this video truly captures a violent incident, it might confirm the behind-the-scenes drama was worse than fans realized. The hush around it might also explain some of the abrupt breakups, the cryptic social media posts, and the final separation. In terms of legal strategy, the introduction of the video means the defense will probably have to address it directly in their opening or closing statements. They can't ignore it. The jury will definitely be told to watch it closely. If the prosecution sets it up as a crucial piece of evidence that shows how Diddy treated Cassie, they might be able to sway jurors to visualize all the allegations in that context. The defense might try to degrade its importance, claiming it doesn't prove kidnapping, doesn't prove trafficking, or that it's a standalone incident among consenting adults that got out of hand. But from a purely emotional standpoint, seeing a woman physically assaulted in a hallway is pretty damning. WAPT emphasizes that it's not the only piece of evidence, but it might be the most dramatic single piece. Bits of documents and testimonies can get lost in legal jargon. A video, on the other hand, is extremely direct. Fans are bracing themselves for the possibility that it might leak. Usually, courts try to keep such evidence under wraps until the trial, but we've seen leaks happen in other high-profile cases. If that occurs, it might define the public's perception of Diddy forever. People say one clip can overshadow years of chart-topping hits, philanthropic endeavors, and brand endorsements. This is arguably the moment that has the defense team in a tight spot. They can't unring the bell. Once the jury sees that video, they can't forget it. Unless the defense can produce an ironclad reason for why it's not as it seems, it's going to be a major hurdle. The prosecution is salivating over the chance to play it in court, likely wanting to drive home the dark undercurrents they allege define Diddy's relationships. This single piece of evidence could become the pivot point that leads to a conviction on at least one charge, and in that scenario, a single conviction might spiral into more. For onlookers, it's a surreal moment. They remember the smiling Diddy who danced in music videos, the man who made public tributes to Biggie Smalls, the unstoppable entrepreneur who launched a fashion line, a fragrance line, multiple philanthropic causes, and more. Now, to see him in a violent moment with Cassie changes the narrative drastically. It's a jarring departure from the party king image, and that's the power of a smoking gun video. Once you see it, you can't pretend it didn't happen. The emotional weight alone might tilt the balance in this entire case. Either way, the 2016 hotel video is shaping up to be central to the trial. If the prosecutors do their job, they'll weave it into a larger story about how Diddy allegedly used force, fear, and control to keep partners and associates in line. The defense has its work cut out for them, trying to reframe or refute what looks like a stark visual record of an assault. WAPT's coverage suggests that the stakes couldn't be higher. With that smoking gun video, there's no easy spin to save face. So here we are in May 2024. The indictment is on the table, the feds are gunning for a RICO conviction, and there's swirling talk that Diddy might try to strike some sort of plea deal to dodge a worst-case scenario. Allegedly, the government extended an offer, as big cases often do. The rumor is that it involved pleading guilty to a lesser count, maybe serving a reduced sentence and paying a huge restitution to victims. That's typical in big federal cases because trials can be long and messy, and the government doesn't mind saving resources if it can lock in a guaranteed conviction. But then, out of nowhere, Diddy rejected it in open court. According to Forbes and ABC, on May 2 he said, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," when the judge asked if he formally declined the deal. This was a jaw-dropper for legal experts because typically if you're facing potential life in prison, you at least consider a plea if it means you might just do a decade or so. Why did he reject it? Some say he still believes the evidence is not strong enough to convict. Others think he's gambling on his star power to sway a jury. Another angle is that maybe the government's offer was too harsh, involving an admission of wrongdoing that Diddy couldn't stomach. If he admitted to anything major, it would destroy his brand forever. As of now, it's just speculation because the details of that plea discussion are sealed. Prosecutors allegedly smirked when he said no. They probably think they have a rock-solid case, especially with what they're calling damning video, digital data, and some ex-insiders who might testify. This means we're definitely heading to jury selection, scheduled for May 5. A dozen everyday people from Brooklyn are going to be called in. They'll fill out questionnaires, detail their thoughts on celebrities, money, race, and everything else that might influence how they view the case. Jury selection is a critical stage because both sides will try to weed out potential biases. Diddy's team might want folks who admire hustle and success and might doubt the negative allegations swirling around a successful mogul. The government wants objective people who won't be starstruck. Forbes wrote that this case is front-page news across financial boards too because Diddy's empire is big money. We're talking about potential hits to his brands, his partnerships, and his overall net worth, which was rumored to be inching toward $1 billion. Shedding that kind of cash in legal battles and potential restitution can drain even a big bank account. ABC noted that if Diddy eventually loses at trial, the aftershock will ripple through all his business dealings. Possibly brand partners will start exiting. There's also a chance that streaming platforms will reevaluate hosting music from someone convicted of major crimes. The stakes are towering. That's why the plea that wasn't moment is so shocking. Most folks in big cases look for a safe exit strategy, especially if the conversation is about decade-level prison time. But apparently, Diddy is not backing down. He might be counting on the best defense lawyers money can buy, or maybe there's a confidence in his corner that certain evidence can be thrown out. Some fans applaud him for fighting, believing in his innocence. Others think it's a reckless move because the feds do not usually bring these massive charges without some strong cards in hand. On May 2, in that hearing with Judge Subramanian, the tension in the courtroom supposedly was thick as a brick. The judge asked if Diddy and his legal counsel understood the risk of going to trial, including potential maximum sentences. Diddy's legal team said they understood. Then Diddy gave that short line, "Yes, I do, Your Honor." It was official, no deal. Some attorneys whispered among themselves, probably trying to gauge if it was a cunning move or a disastrous one. Right now, it's all up in the air. Prosecutors love a good trial, especially a high-profile one that could set a landmark precedent. If they manage to convict Diddy on RICO charges, it sends a message to other powerful industry figures who think they're untouchable. This is a chance for them to showcase that nobody is above the law, no matter how famous or rich they are. On the flip side, if Diddy's star power and fancy lawyers manage to poke holes in the government's case, that will be a massive blow to the prosecution, maybe proving that even with all the drama, they couldn't seal the deal in court. Now it's only days away from jury selection. Once they pick the 12 jurors and a few alternates, the real fireworks begin. The government will lay out a narrative of intimidation, forced compliance, hush money, kidnapping, trafficking, you name it, painting Diddy as the head of a criminal enterprise. The defense will likely try to chip away at every piece of evidence, calling it out of context or fabricated. The video with Cassie might be explained away as a heated argument captured at the wrong angle. The blackmail tapes might be portrayed as personal footage twisted by angry ex-associates. It's going to be an intense back and forth. Forbes pointed out that this trial could affect major deals in the pipeline, possibly scaring investors or partners in new business ventures. They might hold off until they see how it plays out. Some think if Diddy is sure he's innocent, fighting is the only way to clear his name fully. A plea might have left a permanent stain on his legacy. Others argue that trials carry serious danger, especially with the possibility of RICO convictions that result in a life sentence. It's definitely a high-stakes gamble. The hip-hop community is a bit divided too. Some big names are quietly supportive, wishing Diddy well, but they're also cautious, not wanting to share too many public statements. If the trials show terrible evidence, they risk looking like they defended an abuser. So many are playing it cool, maybe waiting in the wings. Fans see the headlines, watch commentary on social media, but there's a lot of confusion and speculation. Without question marks, it's still fair to say that people are uncertain about how this will all go down. The drama is thick, the stakes are high, and the tension grows each day. Media outlets are gearing up. Court TV might want to cover it if cameras are allowed. Even if cameras are not allowed, the daily updates will swarm online. We might see sketches, we might see transcripts, we might hear from law analysts explaining every day's developments. The entire spectacle is set to overshadow any summer tour, album releases, or typical entertainment news. This is the biggest fight of Diddy's life. In the end, the plea that wasn't is a pivotal chapter in this saga. It marks a point of no return. Diddy is telling the world that he'd rather roll the dice in front of a jury than accept a negotiated punishment. Prosecutors are more than willing to proceed. Everyone else is just grabbing popcorn, waiting for May 5, when the real show begins with jury selection. The next few weeks might reshape everything we think we know about one of hip-hop's biggest icons. We've reached the final set of outcomes ChatGPT has mapped out, 3 possible futures that keep popping up in everyone's conversation. This is all based on the mountain of evidence allowed so far, with the biggest factor being that 2016 hotel video. Let's break it down. Scenario A, Diddy is found guilty on all major counts, including the big RICO charge. That means a long sentence, possibly life behind bars if the court decides that the full weight of the racketeering and trafficking allegations hold up. Rumor is that in such a scenario, Diddy's business empire would implode fast. The bad boy catalog could go on fire sale. People would distance themselves overnight. Without Diddy at the helm, a lot of those deals and partnerships might crumble, leaving the brand rudderless. The entire hip-hop landscape would feel the aftershock, because this would be the first time a major mogul of this stature got locked up for life. Scenario B, we see a mixed verdict. Maybe the jury doesn't buy the racketeering angle, but they're convinced of some trafficking or weapons charges. That still points to a long time behind bars, maybe decades, but not necessarily life. For the brand, that's still devastating. The man behind the empire would be in prison for a huge chunk of time. Sponsors would likely bail, and the music might be overshadowed by the scandal. However, Diddy's team might try to salvage some money by spinning a redemption narrative or focusing on philanthropic works. Even so, people who believed in his innocence might feel a sting. The aftermath would be messy, but not as absolute as a full conviction on all counts. Scenario C, the jury is hung or they outright acquit him on the big charges. That would be a major shock. In a hung jury, the prosecution can still come back and try again, so it's not a complete exoneration. But if he's acquitted outright, Diddy might claim victory, telling everyone he was innocent all along. Plaintiffs in the civil suits would still circle, though, and the process might drag on in civil court for years. The brand might limp forward and some fans might remain skeptical. Yet Diddy would likely try to rebuild, telling the world he overcame a witch hunt. Based on all the swirling rumors and seeing how the government has stacked the deck, folks say Scenario A has the highest probability. Why? Because that video is rumored to be extremely powerful evidence. And if that's just one piece, imagine what's in the servers. ChatGPT's analysis basically said that if the prosecutors have the tapes, the time frame, the RICO pattern, and credible witnesses, it's a recipe for a tough defense. But we'll see. People in the industry are whispering about how insane it would be if a hip-hop icon ended up with a life sentence. Some reflect on how Diddy once soared with multi-platinum albums, a near-billionaire net worth, and unstoppable hustle. Now some think he could lose it all in a single legal blow, but that's how the cookie crumbles if the evidence is airtight. At the same time, we have to remember it's all alleged for now. The real test is the trial. The biggest question is how strongly the prosecution can mesh together all these threads. The civil suits, the blackmail tapes, the testimony of ex-bodyguards and staff, that 2016 smoking gun video, and financial records of hush payments. If it all lines up neatly, Scenario A might be in the cards. If the defense lawyers can poke holes, discredit key witnesses, or get evidence thrown out, we might see Scenario B or C. It's a wild swirl of possibilities. But the consensus is that something big is about to shift. If Diddy falls, it sends a massive message about accountability at the highest levels. If he walks free, it might leave alleged victims feeling disillusioned with the justice system. Either way, the hip-hop world is never going to be the same after this. People.com, ABC, and Forbes all hammered home the point that we're at an unprecedented intersection of celebrity, money, and serious criminal accusations. It's not every day you see a RICO charge for a music mogul. ChatGPT's predictions aren't a crystal ball, but they outline the major forks in the road. The real outcome depends on that jury. 12 people who represent everyday viewpoints. Some might be fans, some not, some might be unimpressed by celebrity, others might secretly respect the hustle. The lawyers will do their best to pick and choose who sits in those seats, but at the end of the day, you can't fully predict how a jury will react when the evidence is laid out. That's the roll of the dice. All eyes will be on that courtroom. The coverage will be massive. The trial might run for weeks, even months. Each day could bring new bombshells, new revelations, or new witness testimonies that corroborate or refute the allegations. And if a guilty verdict comes down, the appeals process could drag on for years. Diddy's team might fight tooth and nail, claiming new evidence or procedural errors to try and overturn a verdict. Conversely, if he's acquitted, you can bet the tabloids will shift the story to he beat the system. One thing is for sure, the music deals, brand endorsements, and even the cultural conversation around hip-hop will feel the shockwaves. This moment is reminiscent of major upheavals in the past, but ramped up by modern social media, digital footprints, and the 24-hour news cycle. People will debate for decades, referencing the day Diddy's empire faced meltdown in court. Some might call it the end of the bad boy era. Others might say it was just another test for a star who thrived on adversity. As fans, journalists, or casual observers were glued to this spectacle. It's part soap opera, part legal thriller, and part social commentary on fame, power, and accountability. Everyone's holding their breath, waiting for the final act. Will Diddy break free from these charges, or will he spend his future in an orange jumpsuit? Are we witnessing the close of a hip-hop chapter or the beginning of a redemption arc? Only the trial and that final verdict will tell, and that's how ChatGPT sees the next few weeks playing out. Conclusion: so maybe Diddy's empire will crumble, or maybe it will claw back. The answer lies in 12 seats and a hard drive full of secrets. One thing is certain: when the verdict drops, the shockwaves will not stop at the courtroom doors. They will ripple through music deals, brand endorsements, and hip-hop's cultural soul. Stick around because if ChatGPT's prediction holds, the next headline might read, "Bad boy era officially closed." All right, guys, follow me for more of the latest gossip.